Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to the only show about the workplace that offers you front row seats and a microphone, bringing you practical, timely, and accurate insights so that you can more effectively lead your organization. It's Thursday, March 9th, episode 221. Today, we continue a conversation that started last week when discussing recent court rulings in the space of wage and hour in exempt or non-exempt status. And just as a meteorologist offers guidance on whether to dig out the umbrella, Phil and Burt offer what's on their radar when it comes to forecasting the impact of the FLSA. And wouldn't it be nice if clear skies were ahead? Plus, we answer your questions and present the news affecting your workplace. All this and more on This Week at Work.
Welcome back, everyone. Burt, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Phil. I spent last night, my wife and I have one of my kids home for spring break, and we actually took a little time and went to see an amazing play at the Fox, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. That's a good one, yeah?
Highly recommended. Very well acted. The main actor who plays Atticus Finch is played a role on the show a lot of people like called Ozark, and he just did an amazing job. The whole cast was fabulous, and it's been a long time since I've read that book, but I may have to dust it off and take a read through it again. It was really a well done play. But as far as the program today, Phil, I'm really looking forward to digging deeper into the FLSA conversation we had last week. But first, I think it's important to recognize you this morning, since this would not be possible without you actually appearing on the show 2 weeks in a row. We're setting a record.
Now, I don't know that we're really being fair, having some fun at my expense. I've never missed more than one show, or I've never missed two shows in a row. So that's fair when I miss. I could come to you from Cabo on the beach, but I wouldn't want to rub that in. But I'm happy to be back, and I don't have any foreseeable absences. We'll try and keep it that way. However, coming up, as we do look forward, we look ahead to the AIM Leadership Conference. And I think that is something that is selling out quick, that I know our listeners, if you haven't already registered for, you're going to want to do so. Burt, you're going to be at the conference this year. First time in 10 years that you'll actually be able to be there with us.
Well, not so fast, Phil. I think, yes, Ogletree will definitely have a presence there. And from what I understand, over the next several weeks, our program here This Week at Work will be having the keynote speakers as guests on the program. So it'll be nice to get a sneak peek. But as of right now, I do have a jury trial scheduled that week. And so it remains to be seen whether I'll actually be able to attend the program or not. But if I can, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we hope that you can join us, but just having Ogletree and their presence there is always helpful as our key sponsor for the program. Great partnership, and we look forward. I know Portia will be there as always with a great gift for one lucky attendee. But back to the conference speakers. So let's just review them real quick so we can move on. We have Jack Becker, who's a decorated combat pilot fighter. Top Gun's kind of been a theme, and we've had that theme through last year. And Jack does a lot of work in that space today, and just an amazing person. He will be on the show coming up. Maybe is it next week, I think. Donnie Campbell, the real life Ted Lasso. I stayed awake till 3:45 the other day, binge watching Ted Lasso, so I could get up on all the commentary of what Ted Lasso is about, and what a light, funny, and inspirational program that is. That's on Apple TV. It's awesome. But we'll have the character that's inspired Ted Lasso, if you will, as our lunchtime keynote speaker. And then one of my favorite people here in St. Louis as a business leader, Emily Martin. She's the COO at Guaranteed Electric, and she recently had sold her family business that she was the third or fourth generation owner for to Guaranteed Electric. And now she's a top part of their leadership team, playing a key role in succession planning. So she will also be there. It's going to be a good lineup. I know our listeners, as always, if you attend, you will not be disappointed in that program. That is our flagship program for the year. Burt, let's talk about the poll that we have. We're going to set up a poll question that I think will help the second half of the conversation. So here are two poll questions. How do you stay up to date on changes to wage and hour laws and regulations? We have a list of questions for that. One of them is this week at work. I only want you to hit that if that's actually true, so that gives us some good information. You may select all that apply in this case. And how do you communicate wage and hour policies and regulations to employees? And again, you'll have a list of options for that as well. We will come back to the program, or back to those surveys here shortly, and see how they're doing as we get into the main topic of the conversation. But first, Nick, let's get to Lawyer on the Clock.
All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
So one of the interesting things with this crazy economy that we have going on out there with inflation kind of running rampant, we've talked a lot about this on the program over the last many months, that it's really interesting. Depending on what your business is, you're either still having a difficult time finding employees to work at your facilities, or you are status quo, or you are actually whipsawing, meaning very, very quickly transitioning from needing employees to actually laying employees off. And we have definitely seen an increase in employers laying employees off, requesting reductions in work, reductions in force advice. And one of the things that we've really seen, and not just at my firm, but for our clients, but more broadly in the population, is that a lot of those companies that are doing layoffs right now, they're targeting their diversity programs, the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And this has grabbed the attention of media. Bloomberg Law had a recent article on this just today, actually, that they published. And they're talking about the fact that a lot of those hired when in the wake of the George Floyd incident and a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests, those hired to diversify the workplace have been let go over the past year amid ongoing layoffs as a cost-cutting measure. Employers really have cut DE&I roles at a higher rate than others, according to a February study from a workforce analytics firm called Revilio Labs. More than 300 DE&I professionals had departed companies in the last 6 months, including from Amazon, Twitter, Nike, and the diminishing roles have left observers questioning whether the sense of urgency to increase workforce diversity that corporate leaders made almost 3 years ago was genuine, or really just kind of reactionary, a reactionary decision by business. So we'll have to take a look at that and keep our eye on that. One of the reasons that we've talked about on this program, Phil, that employers need to be careful when they implement diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and they need to do it correctly, is that there have been some issues where companies have faced lawsuits from white employees against employers like Starbucks, et cetera, alleging reverse discrimination. And so DE&I, while it's popular to discuss it, it is something that needs to be handled carefully and thoughtfully and done in a legal manner. But
I don't interpret that so much as it's not important to employers. I really do believe many of the employers I work with, it is important to them. I think what happens is when you get into that business dollar decision, who am I going to lay off because who is producing work? then you're going to look for the positions that, what we say, don't add value being they're touching the work, they're critical to the product being produced, delivered, customer service. And not that diversity and inclusion positions aren't important in a business to help it develop its culture and other things, but they don't actually deliver the work to the customer. And I think that's where sometimes then you have to make hard decisions. We'll see that same thing in training sometimes. Training budgets might get cut just because, you can ramp that back up when the days get to be a little bit brighter. So I don't interpret that in any way as a change in direction. I just see it as it's a excess position I can have that helps build our business and culture. And that's where you would start before you would cut deeper.
Yeah, well, I think the thing you need to be careful of course, is that just like human resources really does play a risk management function within a company, risk mitigation tool, diversity, equity, and inclusion also provides a risk mitigation tool. And companies that have implemented these, just as you need to be careful when you implement them, you need to be careful if you are sort of divesting of that effort as well.
Absolutely. And make sure also, I think in something like that, if you call it out in your affirmative action plan as part of your strategy of deploying that plan, make sure you make the correction as well.
Yep. So next topic, Phil, I want to talk about an important date in everybody's lives that's coming up here, May 11, 2023. Mark it in your calendar, because that is the day.
That's your birthday or something?
No,
Okay.
not quite.
All right.
That's the day that we do expect the emergency declarations that were implemented as part of COVID-19 national emergency and public health emergency to expire. Those regulations have been in effect for several years now. They've been extended several times since their inception. But in May of 2020, the United States Department of Labor, the Internal Revenue Service, issued joint guidance to extend or toll various notices, claims, and election deadlines due to the national emergency. The Employee Benefit Security Administration disaster relief notice, which was issued by the DOL in February 2021, clarified the tolling period. That's often referred to as the outbreak period that ran from March 1 of 2020 till it expires. And one of the ways that it expires is 60 days after the end of the national emergency. And so we do expect the national emergency to end on May 11th, which means that on July 11th, that certain things are going to end that affect HIPAA, COBRA notifications, COBRA elections, COBRA premium payments, benefit claims and reviews, and external reviews of those things. So May 11, 2023, and then I guess it's actually July 10 of 2023. At the end of that outbreak period, those deadlines will revert to pre-emergency deadlines, and plan sponsors, businesses should consider sending communications to inform participants about the deadline changes. They should really be working with benefits counsel to do that properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Your broker can also probably provide you some insight, but that's going to be an important communication for most employers to provide to some level on all those important programs.
Exactly. And sticking with our theme today, Phil, I want to talk real briefly about the United States Department of Labor. We're going to talk a little bit about exemptions today. But I want to mention, I mentioned it on the program before, that President Biden has nominated Julie Su to lead the Department of Labor. As I've said before, the current head of the Department of Labor, Secretary of the Department of Labor, Marty Walsh, has announced that he's going to be departing the administration. He is now going to be leading the charge for the National Hockey League Players Association. And so it's really going to be interesting to see what happens with Julie Su. She comes out of California. And so trade associations have criticized her record running the California Labor Agency in statements following President Biden's announcement last week that he has tapped her to run the DOL. The confirmation vote math is going to be really tricky here, given that the number of senators up for re-election in 2024 are numerous. Democrats, of course, need at least 50 votes to confirm her if all senators are present, meaning that lobbyists really only need to knock off one or two senators. And when I say knock off, I mean change their vote of one or two senators who caucus with Democrats for the nomination to fail. The International Franchise Association is really leading a drive to, they led a drive to sink Biden's prior DOL nominee, David Weil, and they have already announced that they're going to depose oppose her vigorously. We've seen comments that she's been hostile to small business throughout her career. She managed California's unemployment insurance program as head of California's Labor and Workforce Development Agency. And just as the U.S. Senate rejected Weil because he was anti-small business and willing to make new law rather than enforce existing law, that group, that International Franchise Association, is going to be opposing her very, very aggressively.
Well, we have a lot of small business listeners on this program, I know for sure. So we'll watch that closely. Maybe we'll have an update soon on that.
Yes, indeed. I will keep you posted. So that's what I have for you on Lawyer on the Clock today.
Well done. Thank you, Burt. Appreciate that. Let's move forward to Philbert's Forum. We got something really good here lined up for us today.
You've just entered Philbert's Forum, where we peel the onion back and take a lighter look at the workplace.
All right, Burt, I don't know if you've heard about the body doubling that's going on for work at home employees or not. Is that something that's new to you? Or have you heard about this?
Something that I've heard about recently, or heard it called that name. Okay.
Well, I had to look into it a little bit. And I think as this article goes on to say, Anya, that's the person featured in the article. So apparently what workers are doing is they're going on TikTok Live or Zoom or other platforms, and they're inviting other people to join them while they're working from home, so that they have the presence of other people because they're lonely, and it kind of gives them an atmosphere of community that they're looking for. And also it seems to help people maybe who have attention deficit disorders to maybe help stay on track and stay focused and so on. Now, I'll be honest, I don't get this. I don't know that I enjoy being around people, particularly people I don't know that much, that I want them inside my workplace. But there are some things that I think are important to just ask about. There must be something employers need to be aware of. If I'm at home and I'm working and I have 100 guests on my computer screen as I'm working, is there confidentiality issues here, Burt, or anything about this body doubling that employers might want to be careful about?
Yeah, I think that's the main concern from my perspective is anytime you're inviting somebody into your workspace, you run the risk that they're going to be exposed to what I would call confidential, proprietary, and or trade secret information. And you want to make sure that you are not exposing any of the company's confidential, proprietary, or trade secret information to anyone outside the organization, much less complete strangers. My offices, Phil, I know you've been there before, but we've got our common areas that people can freely enter, the lobby area, and even a couple of the conference rooms are accessible. But to get back into anyone's offices, there's secure doors that you have to have a code to get back. And we're, of course, dealing with attorney-client privilege information. And we can't just invite people back to our offices because of the amount of material, even down to who we represent. That's considered attorney-client privilege.
And for us, it would be same with background verifications and other things. But I can imagine someone, picking up the phone and having a conversation and hundreds of people are listening and it's streaming across, public airways, if you will, the internet. And that's something that if employers have people working from home as part of their policy, I guess I would have never have imagined anything like this, but it probably needs to have something in the policy on your company position related to this.
Yeah, I think that the existing company policies on confidential proprietary trade secret information are probably sufficient, but reminding employees about their obligations when they're working remotely to protect that information is certainly highly recommended.
Yeah. That, or hey, let's start having a gathering in our office every day. I'm going to bring in 20, 30 friends each day to sit and hang out with me, I don't know, but staying on the topic of body doubling, right? Let's look at some famous body doubling here, Burt. Okay, so if we look at first, who do we have up first here? We have The Rock and his body double. Is it Daniel Reed? I don't know how you
Wow.
pronounce that, but
Look at
I'm
that.
not sure which one's The Rock there. I think the one on the right is The Rock, but I mean, their tattoos even line up if you look at that.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. We also have a second one here, another body double, Reese Witherspoon. I can see the connection there. It actually looks like her daughter, doesn't it?
It really does look a lot like her daughter.
Yeah. And then we have our third one here, which I think many people might say, even with the right makeup, Burt, you could pass for Johnny Depp, but that's a pretty good body double. But these last two, these are the two that I think really bring it home for me. Look at Burt Garland here. Now, Burt, I think that's a reflection back when you looked, or Jason looked more like you did from your COVID days when you're looking nice and trim today, but back then that's a good body double for you, Burt.
I like it. I'm flattered indeed.
Shabby about. And the last body double that we have, of course, is going to be me and maybe a tilt of the head and John Travolta. I don't know. I'll stay with Grease. That's okay. That'd be a good body double.
Phil, I don't know. Either you need to go with some skin lightening cream, or John Travolta needs to get out in the sun a little bit in order for you to body double with each other.
I don't think I don't see it, but I guess maybe the hairstyle if I grew it out some. But anyway, nevertheless, great body doubles. Good job, Nick. That's Phil Burt's forum. Let's move on and take a look at our poll and get on to the main topic this morning. All right. So the first question: How do you stay up to date on changes to wage and hour laws and regulations? HR industry publications and resources, 29%. And look at that, Burt, 27% of our listeners use the program to help them do that. That's fantastic. That is in part what we want this program to be. We want to keep you informed so you can more effectively run your business. That's what the program is about. Government websites, resources, that's not a bad place. So some good results there. We do have some others that specify. So if you would include those in the chat.
Yeah, Nick, if you would go back to that prior poll, that 1.5%, I wonder if any of those are the employees themselves bringing issues, wage and hour issues to the employer's attention. Just curious there.
Yeah, that sometimes that does happen to you in the world of HR. Yeah. I have had that happen where someone comes in and is bringing something to my attention. They're requesting something I'm not familiar with. And I'm like, well, you got to give me some time to look into this. And I shamelessly go, oh yeah, I missed something here. All right. The next one was, let's see, how do you communicate? Now, this is an important one as well. How do you communicate the wage and hour policies and regulations to employees? Most of the time that goes through handbooks and policy manual. That doesn't surprise me. However, not all these things get communicated through there. So there are some other channels. There's formal training sessions. That would be true. Happens in safety, I know, all the time. From that standpoint, individual meetings or conversations, and then, electronic communications, emails. Used to do bulletin board postings. I know some employers even still use that technique. It works effectively. And then others as well. I can see here that.
And Phil, let me stop you there real quickly. Don't forget that you are required to post on bulletin boards notices about the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yeah, so and that could be posters and other things. And in our chat, we see AIM is a great resource. Posters are a great resource. So there's all kinds of other things that come in. Someone, I appreciate our friend Tim telling me Emily is actually a 4th generation family leader. I said a 2nd or 3rd generation. She's actually 4th. We don't meet too many of those people today. So yeah, that's some good results. So Burt, one of the laws that's changing that we have to stay up with and we have to manage, and I know it can give businesses quite a headache for lots of reasons, is exempt versus non-exempt. So let's dig into that topic a little bit, and maybe you can give us some framework as to how we separate the two.
Yeah, well, let me start with something that took place about a week ago. We talked about it on the program last week pretty extensively, and that is the United States Supreme Court issued a very interesting decision regarding a fuel services worker who worked out on a fuel rig for extracting oil. And this employee, even though he would normally fall into the exemption for being a highly compensated employee, which means that he earned a salary of well over $107,432 per year. In fact, this employee earned, I believe, in excess of just over $200,000 a year, that they would normally be exempt from the FLSA if they customarily and regularly perform at least one of the duties of an exempt executive, administrative, or professional employee, and that they're paid at least $684 per week on a salary or fee basis. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, decided that this employee was not paid on a salary or fee basis. And what this means is that the company is not able to take advantage of the highly compensated employee exemption, and this employee therefore is not exempt from the minimum wage and overtime laws of the FLSA. In particular here, obviously the employee would make the minimum wage requirements, but they're not exempt from the overtime requirements of the FLSA. And so that's what led to this discussion. We got a lot of good feedback from viewers after the program last week that they wanted us to dig in a little bit further. So one resource that I want to make sure everybody is aware of is DOL fact sheet number 17A. And anyone can Google this, DOL fact sheet 17A. And DOL fact sheet 17A covers exemptions for executive, administrative, professional, computer, and outside sales employees under the FLSA. And it goes through, it talks about what it takes to be exempt in general terms. And so to qualify for exemption, employees generally must meet certain tests regarding their job duties and be paid on a salary basis of not less than $684 per week. Employers may use non-discretionary bonuses and incentives, including commissions paid on an annual or more frequent basis, to satisfy up to 10% of the standard salary level. Very importantly, job titles do not determine exempt status. And so if you think you're going to modify people's job titles and be able to call them exempt, the DOL sees through that. That's not going to work.
I do get that question into the office quite a bit, but their title it's got nothing to do with the title.
Correct. In order for an exemption to apply, an employee's specific job duties and the salary must meet all the requirements of the department's regulations. So I know Nick's got the DOL fact sheet 17A up on the screen there. Nick, if you can kind of scroll through that, and it does break out by exemption. You can see it starts with the executive exemption and what people need to meet in order to qualify for that exemption, and then the administrative exemption and the professional exemption. Those are the three most common exemptions that are used, but it also goes through and it details the computer employee exemption, outside sales exemption, highly compensated employees, blue collar workers, police, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders. And then it talks at the bottom about other laws and collective bargaining agreements. But one other resource I want to make sure people are aware of is not just fact sheet 17A. While 17A is very important, the DOL has put out a whole series of fact sheets under fact sheet 17. It runs all the way through fact sheet 17A, all the way through fact sheet 17U. U is U as in umbrella. And what it does is it gets into much greater detail about what you need to do in order to qualify for each of these exemptions. So 17B deals with the executive exemption, 17C deals specifically with the administrative exemption, 17D, the professional exemption. I'll fast forward a little bit. 17H deals specifically with highly compensated workers, and so on and so forth. And so it does go through in detail each one of these. They're only about a 2-minute read each. Some of them are just a little bit longer. I don't think anything's longer than a 6-minute read, but it does give you a very good baseline for determining whether people are exempt under FLSA. And again, what exempt means is that they are exempt from minimum wage and overtime requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act.
So Burt, the one thing that happens most commonly, and we're almost out of time here, but want to touch on it, is we will get a lot of calls in when someone is like, well, they're going to go on FMLA and they've really not been a good employee. They're exempt in their status, but maybe they shouldn't be exempt. We want to cut their pay off. And one of the tests talks about you pay them almost regardless. I mean, there is a way to do this and so forth, but that seems to be a common practice. Any comments or things that you've learned or work with clients on in that space?
Yeah, when you're deducting from the pay of a salaried exempt employee, there is a way to do it legally. There's a few ways for an employer to be able to deduct. And you need to do that carefully. You should probably be working with legal counsel, at least initially, when trying to figure out how to handle that deduction, at least with legal counsel or your payroll company.
Yeah, absolutely. Be very careful in that area. Lane, good morning. I see that you made a comment. I'm still here in Indy. I met with her yesterday as part of our Indy roundtable, and I'm happy to see her. Her comment was she uses AIM all the time. She's a wonderful member out here in the Indianapolis community. Burt, that wraps up our episode today, 221, I think it was. We're getting up there into the 200. So thank you for joining us today. We will be back here next week at the same time, and we'll see you then. Go out and let's be good to people.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link, aimea.org/thisweekatwork, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.